Today on the 21st show, from Central Illinois to Sesame Street, we'll talk with Paul Rudolph and Leslie Carrara-Rudolph. Paul is a composer and music editor for both children's music and grown-up films. Leslie's a puppeteer, best known for giving life to the Sesame Street character Abby Cadabby.
Let's look together way up high for things that are pink in the sky. Zippity-zap!
Paul is originally from Illinois. He and Leslie are married. They met working on the show Muppets Tonight. I'm Brian Mackey. We'll talk with them throughout the hour today on the 21st show, which is a production of Illinois Public Media, airing on WILL in Urbana, WUIS in Springfield, WNIJ in Rockford, DeKalb, WVIK in the Quad Cities, and WSIU in Carbondale. But first, news. From Illinois Public Media, this is the 21st show. I'm Brian Mackey. It's been more than 5 decades since Sesame Street first asked us to come and play, and the show is still going strong. Today we're talking with two of the many people who helped make it happen. Paul Rudolph is a composer and vocal music director for Sesame Street. He grew up in Normal, went to the University of Illinois, and has been making music for the show since 2008. Leslie Carrara-Rudolph is a puppeteer, best known as the hands and voice of Abby Cadabby, a role she's held since 2006, and one that earned her a Children's and Family Emmy Award. They're married, they work together, and they both joined us in studio for a conversation that first aired in April 2026. Because of that, our show is on tape today, so no calls, but our voicemail line is always open. The number, as always, 217-300-2121. That's 217-300-2121. All right, let's start with a fun fact.
Oh, okay, so when Abby goes zippity-zap, that magic word, first of all, her wand is named Wanda, but that magic word I got to make up myself. They came to me and they go, what do you want it to be? What do you want? It's not a la peanut butter sandwiches because that's for Mumford and all that stuff in the cow. So zippity-zap is actually a character that was on Muppets Tonight, where Paul and I met 30 years ago. It's the 30-year anniversary of Muppets Tonight, so I've been with the Muppets 30 years. And Zippity Zap was our favorite character, and it kind of, like, we had her pictured together, and that's where we first met. So Zippity Zap is a nod to that and our true love. You know, when you do something with your wand and magic, you do it with love and you do it from the heart.
So much to unpack there. We're going to get
corny,
to Muppets Tonight and the Pig.
Well, this is why, Brian, I can never follow my
No.
bride with questions and answers because she just performs it. No, okay, my fun fact is on that same show, this is a short fun fact, but on Muppets Tonight, when Little Richard was on, I actually got to sit down at the drum set and kind of test the sound, like go through a sound check with him. And so I got to drum with Little Richard for about 30 seconds.
Yeah,
and
tell him what he said,
pretty
though.
Amazing. Well, as any rock and roller, you know, you're losing your hearing after playing countless shows for decades. And I think towards the end, he used to play with 2 drummers, like loud. And so I'm people were doing work on the set, and I'm kind of just tapping, kind of playing quietly. He's playing the piano, and he's like, "Come on, Paul, come on!" And like he wanted me to play louder and louder. So that was a treat. That was a real treat.
Yeah.
Fun
Excellent.
Fun fact.
All right, so let's start with Sesame Street, since that's where both of you spend a lot of your time these days. Paul, and I'll start with you. What does your job actually involve day to day?
I wear 3 hats. Okay, so my biggest job when we're in season and we're filming content for the show and we're at the set of Sesame Street, I'm the vocal music director for that. And I'm also a music editor because I'm actually in my office recording our cast vocals, singing songs in a little stand-up booth in my office. So I'm running Pro Tools with my right hand and I'm directing them with my left hand. So the 2 hats for that are vocal music director and then audio editor or recordist. So then my 3rd hat is as a composer, and there's a dozen or so composers we use. We all have our little specialties, our little niche. If you need Broadway, we've got a guy named Eli that he lives and breathes Sondheim. He can write that in his sleep. I cannot. I would have to research chord progressions for Sondheim to write that. So my niche is found object percussion. I wrote a fun song about an assembly line on Sesame Street where all the cast members had to work on teamwork to build a little craft. So that's my third hat. So
you have four hats.
Well, what's the fourth?
Well, because
hat?
you
well,
also write harmonies.
Well,
for
a vocal
us.
arranger, that's kind of part of my vocal music direction.
I mean,
I work
trying to-
harmonies for that. So when we do like
Cookie
the Macy's
Monster,
parade,
Abby.
when we do the
You have
Macy's
some-
parade, I have, upwards of almost 20 voices to basically arrange the cast vocals. And we always have a guest singing on that. And I have to kind of put our vocals around that guest. If that guest is an alto or a tenor, I'm kind of working with harmonies around that. So
Because-
yeah, that's a vocal
Yeah,
arranger.
because we have specific keys.
Yeah, the ranges, character ranges are super important for the show, which I learned from
If
Dave
we-
Connor, my predecessor. He gave me this beautiful range chart that shows all the character vocal ranges. And so that's part of my job, is finding the best keys for them, and when they're singing together, working on harmonies. So
Because
if
you can't write Cookie Monster like a soprano part.
No, because
No.
it literally changes our character. Unless
Yeah.
in the script it says Cookie Monster is wearing an ultra tight Speedo,
and then I can
and that affects his
maybe go
voice.
tenor. Yeah.
But I mean, we're like this, and there'll be sometimes just because when Elmo and I sing together, we sound like Pebbles and Bam Bam. We always say. So there's times where we'll, as performers, we'll put a little extra, like a little extra grit or something, so we're not too much, rubbing up against each other. But then if we go any lower, then all of a sudden we're playing Oscar's mother, and that's a different voice and a character, and it sounds nothing like Abby.
So,
All right,
so anyway, those
yeah.
are my hats. that I wear.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's get into the characters. So we have a clip here of this is from a song called Five Fairy Ducks. Abby and friends count down the number of ducks. We're gonna pick it up
Wow,
near the
I
end
haven't
though.
seen that or
Remember
heard that in a
this?
long time.
One fairy duck went out one day beyond the castles and far away. Fairy godmother said, "It's time for a snack!" But none of the 5 fairy ducks came back. Oh.
Sad fairy godmother went out one day beyond the castles and far away. Sad fairy godmother said, "It's time for a snack."
And all of the 5 fairy ducks came back. Hey, fairy ducks, where'd you go? It's lovely this time of year.
I love the
Wow.
emotional journey that
That-
Abby
She's
goes on there.
I know. I'm telling you, Abby's range is just off
Is
the
she
charts
dramatic or what? Way to chew the scenery.
there. That,
My
is-
gosh.
that takes me back. That's
So for
great.
people without maybe young children in their lives, tell us a little about Abby Cadabby. Where does she come from? What's her story?
Oh my gosh, she's so funny. I always say she's like Gracie Allen meets Daffy Duck with a little bit of Barney Fife. Like she's kind of she's so quirky. And when I say Gracie Allen, which is your listeners probably don't even know that, but she has her own Gracie Allen used to see the world differently. And because Abby's from the world of monsters and fairies and storybook world and trolls and
My dad is part gnome, and so that's why we bake him fennel cookies, because fennel's really good for gas, and my dad's gassy.
she has this, she'll take you wait, what did you just say? But she sees the world there with no boundaries, and she's the ultimate, she accepts everybody where they are with wonder and joy. And when she first came out, because she was a fairy in training, she actually got criticized when she first came out, oh, it's a girl who makes mistakes. And I'm like, no, she is resilient. If she makes another pumpkin, that's okay. I can do this. She looks as a mistake as an opportunity to go forward, to see something another way. And, she does not give up. And she is a fearless friend. So she doesn't give up on other people's dreams or her own. And because she's a wish fairy, Tony Geis, who created this character with Judy Freuberg, they wanted to create a funny female character that was kind of like, they called her like a tiny immigrant, that she had a nondescript where she was coming from. So it wasn't from any particular region, but she was on the street and she was able to say, I'm not like anybody here, and I need to find a way to be myself and also, learn from everybody. So she had a non-specific culture. So it was really cool. And they were like, oh, they made her a stupid girl. And I'm like, no, she's resilient. She's smart. She's funny. So, and luckily for me, the writers really got behind my quirkiness. They'd call me up and they'd say, what would Abby dress as for Halloween? And I'm like, oh, a whelping bed. And they're like, what? I go, it's a bed of puppies that moms come to because she loves puppies and she'd want me in the middle of it. And they go, how about a beverage? And I go, oh, a cup of cocoa. So she's very, she believes that the most powerful magic comes from the heart, which is a quote from Tony Geist, the creator. And so ultimately, she just gets people to listen to their heart and starts from there.
Yeah, there was a really interesting New York Times story from 2006, right?
Yeah.
A girly girl joins the Sesame Boys, right? I'm going to read just briefly here. It says, in the past, the show being Sesame Street, has bent over backward to counteract stereotypes with the tomboyish Zoe or the highly opinionated Elizabeth. But political correctness hampers creativity, Ms. Nealon said. Abby Cadabby owns her point of view, but she's also comfortable with the fact she likes wearing a dress. And as she tried to model strong female models, or I said, as we tried to model strong female models, we neglected that piece of being a girl. How much do you get to participate in the development of Abby, over the years?
Over the years. Well, first of all, like, if you look at fairies, like, their culture is to wear those dresses. And she was, like, from a design point of view, she's very whimsical and approachable. Her, the specific, the blue dress blending in with the sky so she can't be seen. And her wings are dragonfly wings. They're not butterfly wings. Dragonfly in fairy folklore is dragonflies can go between two worlds. So you can interpret worlds whatever you want, the spiritual world, the different worlds. Like, she's like the bridge between those things. Abby has like a necklace now that's a dragonfly, that's a light. So I think what happens to me is, as someone who loves to build on characters, I go the extra mile as a writer and a comedian and a performer to endow everything from meaning. So they're very open to that. I'll say, Abby wouldn't say that because she wouldn't ask that question, because she accepts everybody. So she wouldn't question something like that. Also, she's been on for 20 years, right? She's been through divorce. And I remember when the producers called me and they're like, okay, just so you know, we're going to do a special outreach, kids going through divorce, and Abby's parents are getting divorced. And I remember going like, oh, wow, that's going to be hard on her. That's going to be a lot. And they were really sensitive to that. And we talked about, like, kids thinking it's not my fault. This is an adult problem. But Abby's an empath because it's her job to help people with their dreams. So she took along that responsibility. So they were really wonderful the way they wrote that. My most favorite song is with Roscoe Orman and Abby. Roscoe plays Gordon. And I've got Big Feelings.
Yeah,
it's beautiful. And that, I think, was written by JP and Kat.
Yeah.
Another group of composers. So they listened to that, and sometimes we've been on for so long, new people will come in and try to say something about our characters, and all the puppeteers do this, because they embody the heart and soul of it. And we'll have to educate our writers in that form and say, that's not really something for me. That's maybe something for Grover or Cookie Monster or Rosita. And we'll stay true to our voice. So they are really good about listening to that.
Yeah. Paul, can you talk about, and I should say we need to take a break in a couple of minutes here, but can you talk about, this is a show, I think you are probably just at the age that maybe you were a little too old when it first came on. So I don't know.
First generation.
You were, okay.
I'm first generation.
So how do you adapt? You were a professional. You were in the working world for a while before coming to Sesame Street. How do you adapt yourself to something that's so established, yet make your own mark?
Well, it helped that I started on Muppets Tonight because I learned a lot about character voices. So that's where I really learned like where character voices range is hit. And as a music director, I think teaching music to anyone of any age is kind of internalized for me because I started teaching when I was even in high school, just teaching, drummers. But when I look at music on a page, my job is to teach the cast member, and maybe the cast member doesn't even read music, but I can at least teach the nuts and bolts, which are pitch and rhythm. And so that's kind of where I begin every song journey with them, is like just thinking about the notes and the rhythms. And then the cast are so unbelievably experienced at their own voices that I don't have to contribute too much to what they're doing character voice-wise. I just have to make sure, like we talked about before, that the song is in a good key for them. So as a music director, it's kind of like I can go from a clarinet to Elmo to Abby and think about music in a similar way. So I think my background just in education and being a band director for 3 years and private instructor for 7 years, I think everything like translates to getting somebody, a cast member, comfortable with headphones on in a studio learning a new song.
Not just cast members, though.
And
He's
guests
got
as well.
guests.
And
Yeah.
guests. Well,
Yeah.
okay, on that note, so we need to take a break. Let's
Yeah.
hear one of those guests. We are talking with Paul Rudolph and Leslie Carrara-Rudolph. They both work on Sesame Street. Paul does music for the show, including with guests. Here is the artist Sia singing from several years ago.
Yes, it's my songs, and I love songs. Don't know what we do without them. I love songs so much, I want to sing a song about them. Yeah. Songs. I want to sing about high songs and low songs, fast songs and slow songs, and jazzy songs and funky songs. Get up and dance like a monkey songs.
You're listening to The 21st Show. I'm Brian Mackey. We'll be right back after a short break.
Songs can make you feel so good. You just want to shout it loud. I want to sing about glad songs and funny songs, sad songs and sunny songs, rhyming songs and rapping songs.
It's The 21st Show. I'm Brian Mackey. We're listening back to our conversation with Sesame Street composer and music director Paul Rudolph. He grew up in Normal, Illinois, and went to school right here at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. We're also speaking with his wife, puppeteer and comedian Leslie Carrara-Rudolph. She is the voice and hands behind Abby Cadabby, for which she has won an Emmy. We first aired this conversation April 2026, so our program's on tape today. But our email is never on tape. talk@21stshow.org is the address. talk@21stshow.org. I should say that piece of music we were listening to there is Found Object Instruments from an outfit called Glank. We're going to come to that in a little bit. But Paul, let's talk about your background in Illinois. What brought you to the University of Illinois?
The Marching Illini. Full stop.
ILL.
Yes,
INI.
When I was growing up in Normal, of course, we had Illinois State University in our backyard. And, of course, like any, hometown kid, I wanted to get out of town to go to university. But when I first saw the Marching Illini, which would have been like, I don't know, my sophomore year in high school, when my Normal community high school came over here for the band competition, it was the first time I saw a big, giant stadium and the Marching Illini. And that was it. I'm just like, okay, I love this. I love marching. I love drumline. I love all this stuff. So I wanted to go there. That's literally what drew me there. And, of course, I knew that it was a great music ed school. And I think my parents were happy enough about that, too, that I wasn't, I was an hour away, but, out of the house, out of Illinois State University. But no offense to ISU and the Redbirds, but ILL, come on.
Yeah, who's got the best band in the land,
That's right.
honestly. I'll just say, one of my most cherished possessions as a high school senior drumline member was a T-shirt from the marching line with a pink flamingo on it.
Of
from
course.
the Illinois drumline.
The party chicken. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
How do you get from music education to composition? Because that's not a path that most music educators take.
Yeah, I've dabbled in composition since I was in high school, and I think even just ad-libbing things with my friends in the percussion world, in the band room at Normal Community High School, that's kind of where my interest started. And then when I was an undergrad, I had that always in the back of my head. I always had a little 4-track cassette recorder, something where I was just dabbling in my own kind of song world. And I think once I was a band director, I was doing a lot of percussion arranging and writing for like percussion ensemble. Then I would do some original songs for percussion ensemble. And then I was kind of intrigued by film scoring and TV music. And so I would create stuff on a 4-track and send it to my good friend in California. And she actually worked for some film scoring. She worked for a film scoring agent who had, say, 6 or 8 film composers under his wing. And I would send her demo tapes and just silly stuff, whatever I was doing on a 4-track. And she's like, this is pretty good. You should come out here and just work with a composer that's under the wing of this agent and just get out here and do these things. And I was like, well, I haven't really honed my own craft as far as like, what does my composition want to sound like? I knew my percussion world, but aside from that, I wanted to do more. So that's why I came back to school. I didn't finish my master's, but I worked on my master's here to really hone that skill and say, what is my composing art going to be? Is it going to be arranging and sounding like someone else, or, making my own mark? And that was one of my instructors in grad school even mentioned that. He said very specifically, what does the music sound like? That's okay, but more importantly, if you can tell who it's written by. That was such a simple thing to say. Like, if you listen to a composition, can you tell who wrote it? Going way back, can you tell that's Beethoven? Can you tell it's Mozart or Bartok or whatever? So going back to school really helped me kind of focus on how I wanted to compose.
That's interesting. I mean, U of I does have a great composition program.
Yeah,
we used to
definitely.
joke, though, about the 5th floor types. I don't know if you want to get into that.
Well, it
people
was back
rolling
then
dice and, counting cats and
of
things
course.
like that.
Yeah, for me, it was Scott Wyatt. Scott Wyatt, I studied with him in the experimental music. And I heard a piece by one of his students. She took a single cymbal crash and put it on tape and then cut up that tape. This is analog. She physically cut the tape backwards, forwards, all this stuff. And the entire composition did not sound like a cymbal crash, but she used one cymbal crash. And I'm like, that's intriguing. Okay, where can I go with that? Or can I study with that guy? And I did. And I also studied with Zach Browning, he was a theater professor and a composition professor. And he had a really fun minimalist way of composing. And I played on a lot of his pieces as an undergrad. And so I knew going back to school, I'm like, I want to study with Zach because he just had this really interesting take on rhythm. And then I was like, okay, and I want to get into studio stuff and experimental stuff. So between those two, between Scott Wyatt and Zach Browning, and Salvador Martorano, I studied with him as well. And he goes back to like the late 60s with crazy, John Cage kind of stuff. And so those 3 really opened my eyes and ears to my own, style, I guess you'd say.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've got 2 guests with us today, Paul Rudolph and Leslie Carrara-Rudolph. So we're going to have sort of parallel, some aspects of our conversation will be a little bit in parallel. So Leslie, I'm going to go back to you now and ask you about your sort of origin story with what you do today. Because you studied child development. How do you end up doing puppeteering?
Oh, that's actually a super easy jump for me. I mean, I think, first of all, I grew up in a intergenerational family. My grandparents lived with us, so there was a lot of storytelling going along. My dad's Italian. His dream was to be an animator for Disney, and he was, doing a bunch of odd jobs and manual labor, and he got in a pretty bad accident and had to redefine himself. He had 3 kids, 1 on the way. That was me. And he decided to move from Tacoma, Washington, down to California to go to CalArts because he wanted to pursue the dream of being an animator for Disney. And with that, he ended up, exploring all the different things with art. He'd bring art home to us, and he'd go into art education, and he realized that his calling was to be a teacher. And it was great. So when growing up, my dad would take me to school with him, summer school when I was old enough. And we always had, my mom made all my clothes. I had, older siblings, so our house was always filled with stuff. So our house was basically, and I was always in the backyard. They're always like, I'd get in through the dog door eventually once they locked it, but they were always putting me in after school programs because I was a surprise kid, right? So, and I had all this energy. And so I was in the park and recreation department, and then I became a junior camp leader, and then I became a camp leader. But I had all these creative skills that I could entertain kids through storytelling, through drawing, through putting a sock on my hand and making it talk. And so for me, when I saw Sesame Street for the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what it looks like inside my head. My very first puppet, my grandpa, we were in the backyard, and my grandpa says, come here, this snapdragon wants to talk to you. And I'm like, what? So he pinched the corners of a little snapdragon flower and is like, how you doing there? And I was like, whoa, my gosh, everything talks. That flower's talking to me. So I just saw the world with wonder. And as I became doing outreach, doing lots of stuff with the park and recreation department, I also ran into kids that we had. My brother, I'm going to get a little deep. My brother rode a motorcycle to heaven when I was 10 and a half years old. And that changed the landscape of my family. And luckily for me, I kind of became an escape artist. I was able to express myself, and things I couldn't control in my own home, I could control on an art pad or with a character or with a puppet. And it also gave me the ability to see in other children if there was more to their story. And I could get them to talk to me. We'd share through art and through puppets. And I thought, I really feel like I've been raised and given the skill set to reach kids in this way. So when I went to San Francisco State, and I'll also say that I have a learning challenge. I'm not dyslexic. They thought I was maybe ADHD. Since then, I've actually had my brain mapped to find out whether or not those things are true, and they weren't. I had a lot of other things happening, which happens with childhood trauma, and it affected the way I approached learning. So Sesame Street was great for me because there was a lot of visual learning, and I have a perception processing disorder, so I could learn things visually, but words would crash in my head, and I had trouble reading. My mom actually helped me graduate San Francisco State because if there was a multiple choice question, I couldn't answer it. But if there was an essay question, I could tell you what I know. So it was all those things. So I knew that I want to find a major, and I ended up designing it. So the child development was child psychology. The therapeutic recreation was dealing with kids at risk, foster homes, hospitalized children. Back then, crack was a big issue, AIDS, all those different things that happen, and theater arts, and that was storytelling. So I designed my major at San Francisco State, and I just wanted to be the ultimate entertainer for kids. So for me, I just kept, and I put myself, my parents helped me, but I did after school programs, birthday parties, window painting, you name it. And so when Sesame Street, and I loved fairies in the backyard, so puppetry is just one of the tools that I use to reach kids. And Sesame Street was just like, my mom even says that I wanted to move there. When my sister goes, you like literally packed your bags like, I don't belong here, and so that's kind of a broad thing. It's actually what I'm going to be talking about today to the theater arts department and the education department. I'm really excited that those two departments are coming together because there's so many options of ways that you can use your powers for good when you're a performer, because the arts are like the bees. If the bees die, we die. If arts die, humanity dies.
What do you think it is about a puppet, that a child talking to a child with a puppet sort of intermediating.
It's not just children; it's adults.
Yeah, that
as
too.
well.
What is it about that? What is your theory of that? Yeah.
Well, it's so funny because I've been asked to talk about that question in a few sentences, so I'm going to try to do it. I think what happens is like, the feeling you get when you see a puppy or a dog or, there's something that happens with your mind and your heart where your brain and your heart work together in unison to create a feeling of love and joy. And I always say never underestimate the power of joy. So it's almost like a permission slip there's like a change in the energy. When you laugh, scientifically, when you laugh, it makes your saliva thicker. We did some research. My creative partner in my company, Humor with a Heart, we've broken all this down. And when your saliva is thicker, by the way, you have a better immune system. Just a little thing you didn't think you'd hear today.
Another fun fact.
Yeah, fun fact. But I think that there's something happens where when someone sees a puppet, it's like seeing a puppy. There's something that happens. It's a permission slip to be a child, to find your innocence and that part of your soul that so desperately needs a hug.
All right, let me remind listeners, this is the 21st show. We are getting a hug today from Leslie Carrara-Rudolph, who is a puppeteer and performer. You probably know her as Abby Cadabby from Sesame Street. And also Paul Rudolph, who happens to be her spouse. He's a composer, music director, vocal arranger at Sesame Street. He's originally from Normal, Illinois, and is an alum of the University of Illinois, marching Illini as well as the music education program here, and studied composition here. So you both, you mentioned this at the beginning of the program, you meet on Muppets tonight. I understand that, Leslie, you were Spamela Hamderson, which is a very 90s
From the Bay of
great
Pigs
parody.
Watch.
Yes,
Bay of Pigs Watch. Come
awesome.
on.
Awesome. Can you briefly share your sort of meet cute story?
Oh, Leslie can say that. Well, I mean, we always say that the artist formerly known as Prince kind of brought us together. But there were so much fun on the set of that because this is still kind of analog days. And there was a piano, yes, an acoustic piano on set. And we would roll it around between stages. And I had a fake book, and I just discovered that she had a very similar taste in music to me, which is kind of old standards and singing. And I loved her voice. And so we would just, during breaks, we'd just sit at the piano. We'd just go through standards and sing. But the artist formerly known as Prince was on, and there was this amazing puppet thing we did, underwater puppets. She gave her angels, and we were watching that. And Leslie kind of thinks that might have been a spark. But you tell part two if you want.
I don't know.
This could go on for, what time is it?
We got 2 minutes until a break.
Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. Well,
I don't want to know that story.
Well, I mean, I just think that, again, like we would... those angels, we were super exhausted that night. We had like 4 hours sleep, and we were filming this, and we were sitting and watching these angels, and he went and got me some tea, and I was just like, oh wow, this guy's really nice.
So tea brought us together.
No,
really.
and he invited me on a hike that I didn't know was a date. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's lots of things.
Honestly, just the magic of the set. There's something, and Prince. I mean, come on, that was a day. 2 days we will never forget. Working with him was just amazing.
I think we both found our true selves on that set. Paul was, getting to do what he really loved to do, and he was working with a composer. And I was
Richard Gibbs.
It was Richard Gibbs, and it was my very first Muppet job. I had an HBO Workspace show, and they were looking for female comedians who can sing in character. And then I had no idea what I was doing. I was terrible, but it was our first show. But we were both really doing what we love to do in an environment that we didn't realize that we felt at home. And I think we both just were at our best selves. And
so that's good. That's good 2 minutes.
Yeah.
That's great 2 minutes and perfect timing. All right, we're going to take another break, and we will come back more with Paul Rudolph and Leslie Carrara-Rudolph, both of Sesame Street and many other projects. This is the 21st show. Oh, and I should say, we're going to listen to another piece. This is Paul on vibraphone, I believe. Echoism. We'll be right back.
So I've been hoping for months, hoping for years, hoping I might forget. Ah, but it don't get much dumber. It don't get much dumber than trying to forget a girl when you love her and I still need you. What good's that gonna do? Needing is one thing and getting's another.
It's the 21st show. I'm Brian Mackey, and this is the band OK Go. They did, I think it was a Super Bowl commercial some years ago. It involved a Chevy, of course, driving through a desert landscape, and there were all these attachments, I guess, acting as mallets on the car, beating on instruments and chimes and oil drums and all kinds of things. An amazing thing. And Paul, I understand you were involved with that as an instrument.
I was.
So let me reintroduce our guest. We're talking with Paul Rudolph, who's a composer, percussionist, also works on Sesame Street as vocal music director. And we're also speaking with his spouse, Leslie Carrara-Rudolph, a puppeteer, best known as the hands and voice of Abby Cadabby. She's an Emmy award-winning performer on Sesame Street and elsewhere. So, OK Go, that was an epic video. So many of theirs are epic, but that was talk about that experience.
Well, their commitment to every video they've ever done is something that I think every music video creator sets the bar to, because they go all in. And the original idea for the car driving was to drive in a complete straight line and perform the entire song. They couldn't even find enough space to actually physically do that. But that was how committed they were. They were like, nope, we want to drive in one shot. We want the entire song to be one shot in a straight line. So they had to stop and turn around and go back and do laps, basically. But yeah, so one of the producers actually just was researching online and did a Google search for found object instruments and found my website. And that's how they contacted me. I make instruments out of mostly metal things, propane tanks that I cut tongues into to make different pitches, saw blades, motorcycle gears. But I use very specific, what I call activators or mallets, to hit those things and make sounds, because it's not just as simple as a pair of drumsticks on something. And so they contacted me to come up with ideas for sounds that would mimic a song that they had done acoustically, but with all percussion and including pianos in the desert and guitars in the desert. But the biggest thing I think I offered them was how to, quote unquote, activate those instruments from a car using different types of mallets, garden hoses, wooden sticks, things that I could help them think about how a metal or a wooden stick wouldn't break when the car is driving 35 miles an hour and hits something. And so a lot of my contribution was for mallets and activators. I did provide some instruments, but once we got into the weeds about that, I was like, well, the way they did the song was they needed, I think they got 300 pianos or 300 guitars from Gibson, but they used like 150 guitars to do the guitar solo. And they bought every used piano in Southern California they could find. So they had 65 acoustic pianos out in the desert.
I'm trying to imagine the budget for this thing.
Exactly. I mean, their budgets are off the charts. So when I said, look, we can do LP tanks, but you're going to have to buy like 100 LP tanks, and an empty LP tank was like $30. So, some of the things put them out of their budget for my percussion contribution. But then a friend of mine, actually our friend Liz Hara, was studying taiko drumming, and discovered that some of the people that
Japanese drumming,
the Japanese style, and if you wrap literally packing tape around a spare tire, you get a pretty decent sounding drum. So I thanked Liz, and I'm like, I'm going to mention that to Damien of OK Go, and they actually did use that because that was a cheap way to find used tires as opposed to brand new LP tanks. But yeah, it was fascinating. And like I said, their dedication was incredible. And Damien actually took a driving course, a rally-style driving course to learn how to do what he did driving and keep it at a steady speed. The math behind that song and all the songs they do is incredible. Incredible.
Amazing. Leslie Carrara-Rudolph, I want to come back to you now, and let's listen to another clip. This is a character of yours called Lolly Lardpop.
Oh.
I hope I'm pronouncing
Oh my
that
gosh,
correctly.
yes, Lardpop.
All right, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Let's listen to that.
Hey, Russell, what kind of a
bird works at a construction site? A crane! You think I'm nuts, don't you? What kind of socks do bears wear? Huh? They don't wear socks because they have bare feet.
Unfortunately, the radio just doesn't do it the justice of the timing and the facial expressions of Lolly.
Lolly.
Tell me about Lolly Larpop. Yeah.
Oh my God! First of all, kudos to where you're finding these clips, because that was something I did for the Dystonia Foundation for their Zoo Day, their online Zoo Day. The dystonia is a very rare disease that, it's one of the people we partner, or one of the organizations Humor with a Heart partners with. Where we take really heartbreaking and challenging situations and find, a creative way to approach it with love and joy. Okay, so the best description of Lolly, my friend said, if Lamb Chop and Madam had a baby, it'd be Lolly. And she's way more Madam than Lamb Chop. And it's like, I got soul. First of all, thanks for bringing me into this, because I'm 26 years of me being 5 this year. I'm way before that, whatever that fairy character. I don't know. I've blocked her name out. Anyway, and I will be speaking. I founded Humor with Heart. Lolly is, she is a sock with, visually I'll describe her. She has orange hair that's twisted straight up over her head, so she looks like an exclamation point when she opens her mouth. She has 4 teeth. All of them have cavities because she's a candy addict, and she has a candy necklace, a candy crown. She's small, so she says, I can't, I pretty much wear Chihuahua outfits, and such. Her hit song, actually, Paul and I worked together. He found a song called Milano. And Lolly did a whole song where she has a beaver character that has a comb over named Mr. Darcy that plays
Bells.
Bells, and she has Milano cookies that ride Vespas and sing backup for her. And she plays the accordion as usual. So she's kind of like twisted. Lolly is like Mary Poppins meets Monty Python. And what I love about her is that I was born in an underwear drawer. And, I was born under a gay bar in Silver Lake, California. And she has no boundaries. She's 4 to 84, 94, 104. But when I bring Lolly into schools, she's so simple that kids actually go home and they make a puppet. They make a friend, If I bring Abby into a school, kids play with her completely different. They look at Abby as this fairy, as this character. It's this, fully beautiful Muppet. But when you bring a sock or a hand, found object puppetry into school, kids, it's like me seeing the dragonfly, the snapdragon for the first time. They look at it and say, wait, I can do that. And wait, that's just her hand in a sock. So Lolly is incredibly flawed.
She's got range too, though.
Total range. Yeah, she's written, I've done 5 90-minute cabaret shows with her. I wrote a whole musical that got Wake Up You're Weird, which is Lolly being bullied at a play date from one of her twisted dolls. I'm writing a screenplay that I hope to gets it about a senior citizen, a drag queen, and a sock puppet save a mobile park from destruction.
Can you and I know you mentioned Lolly has range. You have range because you've done movies. You were in Forgetting Sarah Marshall and the great Dracula puppet musical. You were also on an episode of The Celebrity Apprentice.
Oh God.
Coaching Arsenio Hall and Lisa Lampanelli while the host of the show, was watching from a
And
boardroom.
Penn Jillette, yeah.
Yeah, Penn Jillette. And he, of course, listeners may know the host of that program has gone on to other work.
No.
What was
We
that
didn't-
experience like?
Okay, well, first let me do a bunch of disclaimers.
Okay.
And let me talk about my range. What you didn't mention, which I wish you would, is I was on Muppets Mayhem, which is, if you don't have Disney Plus, it's the origin story and a talk about the Mayhem band, and I play Penny Waxman. And that is one of the biggest puppets I've ever had on. I had a backpack puppet. It was like I wore a backpack with a metal pole up my back, and she's huge. Like you can fit 30 Abbies in her belly. So that's range. Forgetting Sarah Marshall, I'm going to end with that. So The Apprentice, we never saw that entity. It was Brian Henson. We had a group called Puppet Up. And it was basically puppets and improv, and we were at the Aspen Comedy Festival, and then that led to the Edinburgh Comedy Festival, and that led to the Australian Comedy Festival, and now, it's very popular, and it's puppets. It's basically doing what we do on Sesame Street and stuff, but you see everything. You see us with our hands up in the air, with the way we film Sesame Street. And it's an improv show. It's really entertaining. So that was one of the tasks that was set for that show. And I did it because my friend, who's another female, now it's a little more balanced, but there was not a lot of female puppeteers. There are a ton of female puppeteers throughout the world, but not necessarily that are in the doing.
It was high profile.
Yeah. So anyway. So she talked me into doing it, and I said, come on, let's just do it, and let's focus on the task. So we focused on the task. So there's that. And then the Forgetting Sarah Marshall, I never saw the movie. I was just asked to do that part. And my mom and dad, I go, Mom, I'm in this movie. And my mom and dad went and saw it. And my mom's like, there's a lot of porn in that movie. I go, what are you talking about, Mom? I was mortified. Then Paul and I went and saw the movie, and I was like, oh my God, my parents, they saw this movie.
But the stuff that ended up on the DVD, the extras, is the whole show that the quote unquote show that the character wrote.
Yes,
so you're
and
the
I actually
Dracula, succubus
I
character.
Yeah, there was actually a scene that got deleted. I don't even know if it meant to the extra part of the DVD that I did with Jason Segel, which was the breakup scene. And I had the whole opening breakup scene was done between Jason Segel and my Dracula character, but that was cut. But so anyway, so sometimes, so that's my disclaimer. Like, we didn't know these things were happening, and it's like, but you know what? I always say integrity is not a sometimes food, nor is authenticity is not a sometimes food. So I'm really specific. There's jobs that I've deliberately not taken. And I'm sure I could be further along in my career if I had, but I just can't. I'm just dedicated to my work with kids and families.
Yeah. What a fun conversation. Paul Rudolph and Leslie Carrara-Rudolph, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us during your visit to Central Illinois. Yeah. All right. Paul Rudolph is a composer and music director and vocal arranger at Sesame Street. Leslie Carrara-Rudolph is a puppeteer and performer at Sesame Street. You know her as Abby Cadabby. She does other work. You can find both of them online. We'll have links to their websites at our websites when I actually get the show posted after we're done talking today. We're going to go out with another piece of music. This one is called, I'm looking for it here, Sing a Song, I believe. And this is Paul's work. I think this might have even been his audition tape for Sesame Street. We're going to end with that. And with that, I will say the 21st Show is a production of Illinois Public Media. I'm Brian Mackey. Thanks for listening. We'll talk with you again on Monday.